Step away.
I'm standing, just holding on.
You don't belong here. Step aside.
I'm pregnant. I have every right to this space.
I don't care. Just move.
Wait, are you being recorded?
Enough. Hey.
People saw that.
The train lurched forward beneath flickering fluorescent lights, metal screaming against metal. A woman stood gripping a pole, one hand on her swollen belly, the other steadying herself as the car swayed. Then a voice cut through the noise shop, impatient public. What happened next lasted less than 2 minutes, but by the time the doors opened again, a private act of cruelty had become a permanent public record, and the cost would echo for years. If stories like this matter to you, stories where power is tested in ordinary places, and consequences arrive unexpectedly, stay with this one. Watch closely. Justice doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it arrives quietly, long after the crowd has moved on. The platform breathes out its people in waves. Shoes scrape concrete. A digital board clicks from delay to arriving. When the train slides in, it does so with the tired authority of routine doors opening on cue. A recorded voice reminding riders to stand clear. Inside the car, fluorescent lights hum softly, casting a pale sheen over stainless steel poles and molded plastic seats. Above them, a placard repeats what everyone has seen and almost no one truly reads. Priority seating reserved for seniors, persons with disabilities, and pregnant riders. City Transit Code, Section 412. The letters are clean. The reality beneath them is not. She steps on carefully, timing her footing with a sway, one hand already searching for balance. Her belly leads her forward, heavy and undeniable, a quiet declaration that changes the math of every movement. She counts breaths without meaning to inhale when the doors close, exhale as the train lurches. The seats are full. Some riders look at her and then away, their eyes slipping back to screens, to reflections in the window, to the safety of pretending not to notice. She chooses a pole instead. It's easier than asking. It's always easier than asking. The train accelerates. The car tightens. A backpack nudges her hip. A shoulder brushes past without apology. She adjusts her stance, widening it just enough to stay upright as the rails clatter beneath them. This is the calculus. Balance over comfort. Dignity over confrontation. She has learned it the way people learn to live with chronic noise, by absorbing it, by not reacting until reaction becomes unavoidable. At the next stop, more bodies pour in. The aisle fills. A man boards late, impatient already, the doors closing just behind him. He stands too close, his jaw set, eyes scanning for space that doesn't exist. He notices the seat near her first, not because it's reserved, but because it's occupied by someone who looks like an obstacle. He exhales sharply, the sound deliberate. Move, he says, not loud, just enough to be heard. She turns her head slightly, registering the voice before the words. I'm standing, she replies, calm, factual. Her hand tightens on the pole as the train rocks. He gestures toward the seat behind her. You don't need to be there. You're in the way. The sentence hangs between them, thin and sharp. Around them, the car pretends to keep breathing. A woman near the door glances up, then down. Someone lifts their phone higher, angling the screen as a shield. The man's confidence grows in the silence, fed by it. Anonymity does that. It convinces people they are untouchable. I'm pregnant, she says, not as an appeal, as a statement of fact. He scoffs. So, that doesn't mean you get special treatment. The placard above them vibrates with the motion of the train, its message shaking gently, uselessly. She feels the heat rise in her chest, the instinct to protect not just herself, but the life pressing outward beneath her coat. She steadies her voice. The sign says, I don't care what the sign says. He cuts in, stepping closer. Sit somewhere else. The train brakes suddenly. She sways, catching herself just in time. For a split second, fear breaks through her composure, raw and physical. She imagines falling, imagines hands that won't reach out fast enough. The man notices. His mouth tightens, not with concern, but with something like satisfaction. See? He says. You're unstable. The word lands heavier than he knows. Or maybe he knows exactly what he's doing. Around them, the air thickens. A rider near the window clears his throat but says nothing. Another shifts, creating space that no one fills. This is how ordinary violence works, not with fists but with permission. Permission granted by silence. She feels the eyes now, finally. Some sympathetic, some curious, some calculating the risk of involvement. She weighs her options quickly, the way she's learned to do. Speak louder and escalate. Stay quiet and absorb. Move and concede something she shouldn't have to. None of them feel right. Please, she says, the word chosen carefully. Just give me some space. He laughs, short and incredulous. You people always play the victim. The phrase snaps something into focus. It's no longer just about space on a train. It's about who belongs and who must make themselves smaller. Her pulse steadies. She reaches into her pocket without breaking eye contact, fingers brushing glass and metal. The phone feels heavier than it should, as if it knows what it's about to become. She doesn't announce it. She doesn't threaten. She simply raises the camera. The red light appears on the screen, small and steady. The man notices it instantly. His posture shifts. His voice changes, not softer, but more performative, louder now, meant for an audience he hadn't planned on. Around them, phones rise too, emboldened by the first act of defiance. The car feels different in this moment, like a room where the lights have been turned on. The train barrels forward, carrying them all toward the next station, toward consequences no one can fully see yet. The camera keeps rolling. The phone trembles at first, a human shake betraying adrenaline and breath. The frame catches the man's shoulder, then the floor, then steadies at. Her grip firms. It's a small act of control in a space that has offered her very little. The red dot remains lit, recording, witnessing. The train's motion smooths out, and with it, the image sharpens. Faces come into focus. The pole gleams under fluorescent light. The placard above them, priority seating, slides into the corner of the frame. Accidental, but damning. The man notices the steadiness and reacts the way people do when power shifts unexpectedly. His voice grows louder, pitched for the room. Go ahead, he says, hands spreading in mock permission. Film me. I'm not doing anything wrong. The words are chosen carefully now. He's performing innocence, rehearsing it aloud. The woman doesn't respond immediately. She angles the camera just enough to include the sign, the seat, his proximity. Her silence stretches, and in that stretch, his confidence wavers. Calm, in moments like this, is not passive. It's forensic. I just asked for space, she says at last, evenly. You told me to move. That's not harassment, he snaps. I didn't touch you. A rider behind him exhales audibly. Another shifts, closer to the door, eyes fixed on the floor. Someone else, an older man with a transit lanyard clipped to his coat, leans forward slightly. Hey, he says, voice low but firm, back up. She's pregnant. The intervention is brief, imperfect, but it changes the air. The antagonist turns, startled by opposition. Mind your business, he replies, sharp. The camera catches the lanyard, the logo partially visible, the city seal. Small details accumulate, each one a thread that could be pulled later. Above them, unseen but present, the transit authorities' cameras continue their silent work. Fixed angles, wide coverage, car number stenciled near the ceiling. A1173. Time code ticking in the corner of an internal system no one in the car can see yet. These cameras don't feel human, but they are thorough. They don't blink when voices rise. The woman shifts her weight again as the train slows for the next station. The man steps closer, despite the warning, crowding the frame. You're making a scene, he says. This is why nobody wants to deal with you. She inhales, controlled. You're the one speaking, she replies. I'm just standing. Her words land cleanly. No insult. No escalation. The calm becomes an accusation precisely because it refuses to mirror his heat. The camera captures his jaw tightening. The micro-expression of someone realizing the story isn't going the way he planned. The doors open. A rush of air, then bodies. A few riders exit. A few more enter. Eyes flicking toward the raised phones, sensing tension before understanding it. The man glances at the platform, then back at the camera. See? He says loudly. Everyone's fine. You're fine. The older man with the lanyard shakes his head. You need to step back, he repeats, louder now. Transit code says priority seating. Harassment's a violation. The word violation hangs heavier than any insult. It carries implication. Procedure, consequence. The antagonist scoffs, but there's a flicker of calculation in his eyes. He knows what words like that can become once they're written down. The train moves again. The camera pans unintentionally, catching a young woman near the door, wiping her eyes, then snapping back to the center. The footage is imperfect. That's its strength. It feels real because it is. The woman recording narrates quietly now, not for the man, but for the record. I'm on the metro, she says, voice steady. This man keeps telling me to move. I'm pregnant. He won't give me space. Narration turns experience into evidence. Dates, places, actions. The man interrupts. Stop lying, he says. You're twisting this. She doesn't argue. She adjusts the frame to include his face fully. Light catches the lines around his eyes, the flush creeping up his neck. The camera sees what institutions often miss in written complaints: tone, proximity, the way someone uses space as a weapon. Around them, reactions fracture. One writer raises his phone higher, committing to documentation. Another steps into the next car at the inter-car door, choosing distance over involvement. A woman, near the window, murmurs, "This is wrong," but doesn't move. Each response becomes part of the environment, a map of social pressure and fear. The antagonist changes tactics. His voice drops. "You think this is going to help you?" He asks, quieter now, meant only for her. "You don't know who you're messing with." The threat is soft, deniable. The camera hears it anyway. So do the fixed lenses overhead. He steps back half an inch, enough to claim restraint if asked later. The older man with the lanyard meets his eyes and doesn't look away. "We're all seeing you," he says. The plural matters. The train slows again. This time, the woman recording makes a decision. She steps toward the door, still filming, creating distance without retreat. The man doesn't follow. He mutters something under his breath, captured, though indistinct. The doors open. She steps onto the platform, heart pounding but posture upright. The car doors slide shut between them, glass reflecting faces back onto themselves. Inside, the man's mouth is still moving. Outside, the platform noise swells. The video keeps rolling as she turns, catching the car number, the station sign, the clock on the wall, reading 8:17 a.m. Time anchors truth. Her thumb taps the screen. The recording ends. Another tap. Upload. The progress bar creeps forward as the train pulls away, carrying with it the man's last performance. The bystander silences, the placard that shook uselessly above it all. By the time she pockets the phone, the footage is no longer hers alone. It's leaving the platform, traveling faster than the train ever could, entering timelines and inboxes and servers that don't forget. What happened inside that car has crossed the threshold. It's no longer just witnessed. It's recorded. The video finds its audience before the city finds its footing. By noon, it's everywhere, cropped, reposted, slowed down, captioned in fonts that shout certainty. The internet does what it always does, it accelerates. A moment measured in seconds becomes a referendum on character, on race, on who deserves space in public. Headlines shave nuance to fit screens. Pregnant woman harassed on metro. Man confronted after viral video. Each version claims the truth while simplifying it, sanding down the parts that don't travel well. Comment sections split cleanly down familiar lines. Some see cruelty without context, others demand context as a defense. Armchair analysts pause frames, debate tone, argue intent. The footage loops, and with each loop, the man's face becomes more recognizable, more searchable. He learns this the hard way through an email from HR marked urgent, through a calendar invite that appears without explanation, through the sudden deactivation of his building access badge at 3:42 p.m. Logged automatically by a system that does not care about outrage, only policy. His employer moves cautiously, the way institutions do when risk enters the room. An internal review is announced. He's placed on administrative leave pending investigation. The language is neutral, procedural, designed to withstand scrutiny. Still, the effect is immediate. His desk sits untouched. His name disappears from meeting agendas. Colleagues avert their eyes in the hallway, unsure whether proximity implies endorsement. By evening, transit police have the file open. They don't start with emotion, they start with timestamps. Car A1173, Station Oakwood Central. Time 8:17 a.m. They pull fixed camera footage, sync it with a viral clip, align audio where they can. A supervisor signs off on the incident classification. Harassment, potentially aggravated. Protected class considerations flagged for review. The paperwork is thick, precise. Every box checked becomes a path forward or a barrier later. The knock comes just after dinner. Two officers stand in the doorway, posture formal, hands visible. "Sir," one says, "we're here regarding an incident on the metro this morning." The words are practiced. The man nods too quickly, already talking, already explaining. They listen, they always do. Then they explain the next steps. Voluntary statement. Rights read aloud. No cuffs yet. Not tonight. Across the city, the woman's day contracts in a different way. Her phone keeps buzzing messages from strangers, from friends she hasn't spoken to in years, from advocacy groups asking for comment. She silences it during her prenatal appointment. The exam room quiet except for the rhythmic reassurance of a heartbeat amplified through a small speaker. The technician smiles. The moment is intimate and grounding. a reminder of what matters that doesn't trend after. She sits with a legal aid attorney in a modest office near the courthouse. The attorney speaks carefully, explaining process, not promising outcomes. A sworn statement is drafted, dates confirmed, language tightened. The woman signs, her name joining a document that will be read by people who were not there, who will never hear the tone in the man's voice the way the camera did. She feels the weight of representation settle on her shoulders, not just as herself, but as a symbol others are already shaping. Transit police request a formal interview. She agrees. The room is small, neutral, designed to minimize distraction. An officer asks open-ended questions. Let silence do its work. She answers without embellishment. When she doesn't remember exact phrasing, she says so. Credibility, she's been told, lives in restraint. The officer notes her composure, the consistency with the footage. He marks it in the file. Charging decisions take time. The prosecutor's office reviews statutes, weighs thresholds. Harassment requires proof of intent and repetition. Disorderly conduct hinges on public disturbance. Hate crime enhancements demand evidence of bias, motivating the act a higher bar, one that courts scrutinize closely. The language matters. The difference between reckless and knowing can add years or erase them. The internet doesn't wait for this. It declares verdicts hourly. The man's lawyer advises silence. He follows it poorly at first, then better. A statement is drafted and never released. His social media goes dark. Still, the consequences stack. A neighbor recognizes him. A store clerk hesitates. The narrowing is subtle but relentless. A series of small denials that add up to a different life. Weeks pass. The case solidifies. The prosecutor files charges aligned with the evidence they can prove, not the outrage they can feel. Harassment in a public conveyance. Disorderly conduct. Civil liability flagged for later. The hate crime enhancement remains under review, contingent on further corroboration. The system moves with caution that reads like indifference to those waiting. On arraignment day, the courtroom is quieter than the internet ever was. Wooden benches, fluorescent light, softened by age. The judge enters. Everyone stands. Names are called. When his is spoken, it sounds smaller than it did online. He steps forward, suit pressed, eyes forward. His attorney whispers. The charges are written to the record. Language formal and spare. Words like alleged and statute replace hashtags. Across the aisle, the woman sits with her counsel. She watches without staring. This is not closure. It's translation. What happened on a moving train is being re-rendered into a language that can punish or absolve, but never fully explain. Bail conditions are set. A court date scheduled. The gavel falls with a sound that feels anticlimactic. Outside, cameras wait. Inside, the record is made. Justice, at this stage, is still abstract, a promise written in margins, a process unfolding out of view. As the courtroom empties, the woman exhales, not in relief, but in recognition of the long road ahead. The internet has already moved on to the next clip. The law has just begun to speak. The courtroom turns the moment into geometry. Screens descend. The lights dim just enough for the video to take precedence. Time codes appear in the corner of the frame, sterile and precise. 8:17:42. The train sways. The placard flickers into view. The man's voice enters before his face does, sharp and compressed by the acoustics of the car. The room listens differently than the internet did, slower, with rules. No one talks over the footage. No one scrolls past. The prosecutor pauses the video at intervals, letting the stillness do its work. She asks the jury to notice distance, posture, the way space is used as pressure. She doesn't say the word fear. She lets the frame say it. When the video resumes, the woman's voice remains even. The calm so steady it feels like restraint under oath. The prosecutor anchored each beat to statute, public conveyance, protected class, repeated conduct after a clear request to stop. Words become scaffolding. Harm becomes legible. The defense stands and reframes. Stress, they say. A crowded commute. A misunderstanding amplified by a camera. They argue that volume is not violence, that discomfort is subjective, that intent matters more than impact. They suggest the camera escalated the exchange, turned a private dispute into a spectacle. The argument is careful, not cruel. It is designed to feel reasonable. Experts follow. A transit policy analyst explains priority seating, enforcement gaps, how signage functions as both instruction and shield for agencies. A behavioral psychologist speaks about proximity and threat perception, how bodies read danger before language catches up. Cross-examination tightens the lens. Definitions are tested, thresholds debated. The jury takes notes. When the woman testifies, the room quiets in a different way. She doesn't dramatize. She narrates. She describes balance, the math of staying upright, the moment she chose to record, not to punish but to protect. The defense asks if she felt endangered. She answers honestly, not in the way movies teach danger, but in the way life does. A steady erosion of safety. The judge sustains objections sparingly. The record grows. The man takes the stand last. He speaks of pressure, of feeling accused, of a day that spiraled. He insists he never meant harm. The prosecutor asks him to watch the video again, to narrate his choices. He does, haltingly. The gap between intention and effect opens wide enough to be seen. Jury questions arrive in writing. They ask about definitions, what constitutes harassment, how repetition is measured, whether silence can be coercive. The questions map the fault lines of a society still negotiating what accountability looks like in public spaces. The judge answers with law, not philosophy. That too is a choice. Deliberation stretches into hours. Outside, the city continues. Inside, 12 people weigh a moment against a codebook. When they return, the verdict is read without flourish. Liability found. Damages assessed. The numbers land with a dull finality. 279. Compensation for harm. Deterrence for the future. Sentencing guidelines follow. Calculated not by outrage but by statute years, measured in calendars, not headlines. The man's shoulders drop. His attorney nods once. Across the aisle, the woman closes her eyes briefly. There is no victory in her posture, only exhaustion. The judge explains the sentence, the reasoning, the boundaries. He reminds the room that punishment is not spectacle, it is a mechanism. The gavel falls. The bench empties. The screens retract. People stand and gather their things. Outside, cameras wait again, hungry for reaction. Inside, the city exhales without relief. Accountability has arrived, heavy and imperfect. It mirrors the moment back to everyone who watched it and asks, what will change the next time the doors close? The reforms come first as memos, then as meetings, then as modules uploaded quietly to an internal portal most writers will never see. The Transit Authority updates its language harassment prevention, bystander intervention, priority seating enforcement. Supervisors' initial attendance sheets. Operators are reminded of escalation pathways, of when to radio control, of how to document incidents before memory erodes. New signage appears weeks later, cleaner fonts, bolder phrasing, consequences spelled out where suggestions used to live. None of it feels dramatic. That's the point. Institutions change the way glaciers do, slowly, under pressure, reshaping the landscape without spectacle. The woman returns to the system because life requires it. Work does not pause for justice. Neither does pregnancy. She boards the train again on a different morning, scans for space the way she always has, muscle memory intact. Some riders notice her belly and move without being asked. Others don't. She takes a seat when it's offered, stands when it isn't. The car feels the same, and not the same. She feels watched sometimes, recognized in the soft way strangers think is kindness. She feels invisible at others. Healing, she learns, is not linear. It coexists with vigilance. The man begins his sentence away from platforms and placards, measured days replacing the immediacy of minutes. Time stretches differently there. He attends mandated programs, listens to lectures on accountability and bias delivered in neutral rooms. He writes letters that go unanswered. The clarity he expected never arrives. Consequence is not instruction, it is interruption. It stops a life and asks questions it cannot answer on its own. Civil processes continue in parallel, quieter but consequential. Funds are allocated, liens placed, schedules set. The number $279,000 becomes less abstract as it intersects with budgets and plans. It compensates, it deters, it records. It does not restore what was taken in that moment between stations. Months pass. The video fades from feeds, replaced by newer outrages, sharper clips. What remains is the record stored, searchable, cited in trainings and court filings. A case study. A warning. A line in a policy update that traces back to a morning commute and a choice to lift a phone. On the platform one evening, announcements echo off tile and steel. Trains arrive on time and late. People cluster beneath digital boards, negotiating space with practiced indifference. A recorded voice reminds riders of priority seating, of courtesy, of rules that only matter when enforced. The doors open, people step inside, the doors close. Justice here doesn't feel like triumph. It feels like recalibration. A narrowing of what is acceptable. A widening of what can be named. The city exhales and keeps moving, altered in increments too small to celebrate but too real to ignore. The train pulls away, carrying ordinary lives forward. Somewhere above the seats, a sign holds steady. Somewhere below the noise, a record persists. And in the brief silence after the doors close, the public has learned quietly what it will no longer tolerate.